Toyota, AGA Panasonic, lubrication equipment, Sani, and Lucas proudly present highlights of the Caledon 400. The cream of South Africa's off-road racing brigade converged on the peaceful eastern Free State town of Wepener for the recent Caledon 400. The Caledon was the sixth and penultimate round of the South African Off-Road Championship, and with rain an unusual commodity in the eastern Free State at this time of the year, conditions were expected to be hot and dusty. Amateur forecasters were not caught out on this score. The Caledon event saw the return to action of some veteran off-roaders. Don Bale, Robbie Walk and Greg Weevil were back in the fold, and to prove that a little technical ingenuity is still part and parcel of off-road racing, former navigator Mike Pretorius pitched in with a hybrid home-built quad racer. Also back in the fray after a long layoff through injury was top biker Yuri Human. For series leaders RP Reiniger and Robin Houghton in the Bankfin Toyota Land Cruiser, the Caledon offered the opportunity to clinch this year's production vehicle championship.
Ons het 'n bietjie probleme gehad nou vanjaar met die vooras en ons gaan nou hierdie event so 'n bietjie stadiger ry en net probeer om 'n goeie plek te ry sodat ons nie weer uit vierwieldryf uitgaan nie. So ons gaan ons beste probeer.
Although they had a tight hold on the championship, Reiniger and Houghton were up against some heavyweight opposition. Rustenburg and Settler 400 winners Cassie Coetzee and Richard Leake in the Castrol Toyota Hilux, and reigning production vehicle champions Cliff Barker and Mike Redden in the Video Sport SVM Land Rover were looking to produce good results. Behind Reiniger and Houghton on the road, the Natal pair of Neil Woolwich and Paul Vermaak in the time-freight Nissan Sani were aiming for their second win of the season after a maiden national championship success in the Sugarbelt 400. Since their Bell Equipment Sugarbelt 400 success, Woolwich and Vermaak have not had much luck in a vehicle that has enormous potential. Early morning sun and dust made conditions a little tricky for the crews, and it's in these circumstances that being first on the road is a major advantage. Behind the Sani, the Eastern Cape crew of Newton Love and Colin Pote in a Nissan Safari, and the husband and wife team of Niels and LB Lemmer in a Toyota Hilux were also having to contend with the dust thrown up by those ahead of them on the road. After winning their class on the Settler 400, the Lemmers were looking for another good finish. Springboks Cassie Coetzee and Richard Leake in the Castrol Toyota Hilux looked to be in fine fettle early on in the Caledon. The pair earned their South African motorsport colours in rallying, and Coetzee always revels in the quicker sections of an off-road race. Chasing after the Toyota in the early stages were Cliff Barker and Mike Redden in the Video Sport SVM Land Rover. The pair went into the race as reigning production vehicle champions, but have run into a few problems in the latter part of the season. Behind the Land Rover, champions-elect RP Reiniger and Robin Houghton were maintaining a steady pace in the Bankfin Toyota Land Cruiser, with Neil Woolwich and Paul Vermaak starting to push hard in the time-freight Nissan Sani. Following his success in the Sugarbelt 400, Woolwich is one of the few competitors to have won national off-road events on both 2 and 4 wheels. Niels and LB Lemmer were having another good run in the Toyota Hilux competing in Class E. After class wins in both the Toyota 1000 Desert Race and the Settler 400, the Lemmers had taken early control of the class, forcing Chris and Andrew Birkin to do the chasing in another Hilux. The Birkins were having a trouble-free run, and behind them the Eastern Cape pair of Newton Love and Colin Pote were hoping to avoid a repeat of the Settler 400 when they rolled the Nissan Safari. The only crew in with a slight chance of stopping RP Reiniger and Robin Houghton from winning the production vehicle category were brothers Ralph and Ray Henderson. The pair were holding down a place in the top 10 in the Printer Roller Services Ford and were running at the front of Class F. At the head of the field, there'd been a change in running order, with Neil Woolwich and Paul Vermaak now first on the road in the time-freight Sani, after Cassie Coetzee and Richard Leake lost time through a puncture. Cassie Coetzee and Richard Leake lost 4 minutes when a piece of metal in the road ripped a tyre to shreds and were trying to make up ground on the time-freight Sani. Behind the Castrol Toyota, the Bankfin Toyota Land Cruiser of RP Reiniger and Robin Houghton was in a solid 3rd place, with the pair driving more with an eye on winning the championship than winning the race. In another solid performance, Niels and LB Lemmer in the Toyota Hilux were fourth on the road and in complete control in Class E. The Lemmers had moved ahead of Cliff Barker and Mike Redden in the Video Sport SVM Land Rover, who lost more time with another broken brake pipe. Like Coetzee and Leek, the Barker-Redden combination were pushing hard to try and regain lost ground. At the front of the field, Neil Woolwich and Paul Vermaak looked to be well on the way to their second national championship victory. The time-freight Nissan Sani was maintaining a 2-minute advantage over the Castrol Toyota Hilux of Cassie Coetzee and Richard Leek. For the Springbok pair, there was to be trouble up ahead, with the Hilux running into a late gearbox problem that was to see them drop down to 5th overall and 4th in class. Richard Leek's wife, Renelle, expecting the couple's first child, was among the spectators and unaware of the problems waiting up ahead for her hubby. With Coetzee and Leek losing around half an hour while they sorted out the problem, Arpi Reiniker and Robin Houghton moved up into second place in the Bankfin Toyota Land Cruiser to make sure of the production vehicle championship. Behind them, Cliff Barker and Mike Redden in the Video Sport SVM Land Rover also benefited from the Coetzee Leek drama, moving up into third overall. The husband and wife team of Niels and LB Lemmer also scored when Coetzee and Leek dropped down the field. The Lemmers took over 4th place in an impressive performance in another Toyota Hilux and completely dominated Class E. It gave the Lemmers their 3rd class win in a row, but at the head of the field it was Neil Woolwich and Paul Vermaak who brought the time-freight Nissan Sani home for their second national championship victory.
Route was a lovely route. I must say, I think it's one of the best events we've had, marking and organisation-wise. The marking was fantastic, couldn't fault it anywhere. None of the markers were pulled down. All the warnings were very good. It was a rough, very demanding route. I think you can see by time it's quite a long race. I expected it to be a lot quicker. But it was very rough. The dust was terrible. And with starting so low down, we really battled in the dust. It wasn't such a great move.
There were celebrations also for Arpi Reiniker and Robin Houghton, with 2nd place enough to give the pair the 1995 South African Production Vehicle Championship.
Ek is bly om die Suid-Afrikaanse kampioenskap te wen, nou die 3de keer, so ek baie bly daaroor.
So maak vir druk van jou 'n bietjie af vir die roof.
Ja, wel, ons gaan nou sekere modifikasies doen vir die roof, so die roof kan ek voluit gaan of ek nou hom klaarmaak of nie. Ek gaan vir 'n wen of niks nie.
Northwest Province farmer Vickers van Deventer has dominated the Quad Racer Championship all season, building up a handy lead over Derek Johnson and Paul Breckel. With van Deventer a huge pre-race favourite to win again, much of the quad interest at the Caledon centred around the Suzuki Monster Quad, built at home by Mike Pretorius. The intrepid Pretorius usually goes off-road racing in the relative comfort of the navigator's seat in a car.
Well, I call it a monster quad, but it's actually a mobile gym because it's quite a heavy thing. It's about 250 kgs. And the reason why I built it is because I actually wanted a Banshee, but I couldn't afford the price of a Banshee. So I thought, well, I'll build myself a quad. And I had the motor, and so I just got stuck in. It took me 2 months of nearly a divorce, and there it is.
There's not much of Vickers van Deventer, but he's brought a new meaning to quad racing in South Africa. Once the quad brigade were underway, van Deventer set about disappearing into the distance on the Pro Security Yamaha Banshee. Trying to stay with van Deventer were Derek Johnson on the Yamaha dealer team Banshee and Yuri Duplessis on the Gap Racing Banshee. Enjoying championship status for the 2nd year in a row, quad racing is both fast and spectacular. Handling a quad racer at speed over rough terrain is akin to being mounted on a motorized bucking bronco. It takes a huge amount of skill and vehicle control, along with a touch of courage to race a quad, with the formula rapidly growing in popularity. The quads race 2 classes, with a category for modified vehicles and a category for standard machines. Racing a quad allows a driver to produce some virtuoso performances, but falling off is not recommended. One of the first competitors to ride in the Quad Racer National Championship was Billy Coetzee, who so far this season has had a disappointing time of it. Although highly experienced, Coetzee has battled to find consistency this year and has fallen well down in the championship stakes. While Coetzee battled along in midfield, the flying Vickers van Deventer was again demonstrating the overwhelming superiority he's built up this season. Mounted on the Pro Security Yamaha Banshee, Vickers van Deventer was busy building up a lead of nearly half an hour over Yuri Du Plessis on the Gap Racing Banshee. Du Plessis had taken over second place from Derek Johnson and was slowly but steadily starting to open up a good gap between second and third. At the back of the field, Mike Pretorius was soldiering along on the Monster Quad. The ungainly-looking home-built special was not as manoeuvrable as the custom-built vehicles, but Pretorius was out there having fun. Over an hour ahead of Pretorius and nearly half an hour ahead of Yuri Du Plessis, a still fired-up Vickers van Deventer came flying home to notch up another thoroughly convincing victory. Vickers van Deventer is almost unbeatable in South Africa, with Yuri Du Plessis making up championship ground by finishing ahead of third-placed Derek Johnson.
Ek het dit kalm gevat die eerste ronde, ek het gemaak soos Willie van der Linde vir my gesê het, my borge, sê ek my ding nie deur my gaan trek nie, mooi hou en heel hou om punte te kan kry. Dit was baie lekker. Dit was die beste wedstryd wat ek in my lewe gery het. Die merk was op so hoë standaard, mens kan van niemand dit vertel. As al die wedstryde so wil lyk, dan sal dit net 'n plesier wees om te kan ry.
Going into the Caledon 400, only 10 points separated the top two crews in the Special Vehicle Championship. Franz Czepek, Senior and Junior, led the Eastern Cape pair of Greg Harvey and Lionel Acton, with plenty at stake for both crews. While there was a great deal of interest in the championship battle between the Czepeks and the Eastern Cape pair, the Caledon also saw the return to action of some veteran off-roaders. Don Vale, navigating for Bux Caroline, was one of them.
You know, off-roaders never die, and an old friend of mine, Bux, invited me to come and share this with him, and I thought it would be a good idea, you know. Takes away some of the day-to-day activities at work, and it's good to get out and meet all the old guys again. So it's a one-off thing, and I'm going to enjoy it.
Also back behind the wheel of an off-road car was Rob Walk in a new vehicle brought in from America. Sitting alongside Walk in a new role was former driver Greg Weevil.
I'm glad I'm back actually. I'm enjoying it. I really am enjoying it again. A break like that seems to do one a lot of good. Back and I'm enjoying. Hopefully Greg's enjoying. What do you say about it?
I'm enjoying it, but yeah, I'm having a good time. It's nice to be different to being the navigator seat, but enjoyable.
With a top quality field, the Caledon 400 had the potential to produce one of the races of the season. Bux Caroline and Don Vale led the pack away in the lubrication equipment Madiba, which was having only its second outing. Natal crew Derek Pinoy and Hilton Lowry were in hot pursuit of the Gauteng pair, with Nardus Alberts and Peter Mathieu in the Rapsco Raceco third on the road and looking to continue recent good form. Rustenburg 400 winners Stan Illman and Franz Stangl also finished the London to Mexico rally earlier this year and were back off-road racing in the Shell Raceco. Chasing after the bright yellow Raceco was Harry Roscoe in the Protea Playing Cards Raceco, who was the first of the single-seater brigade. Having to both drive and navigate places an extra burden on the single-seater drivers, who rely heavily on route markings carried out by race organisers. Behind Roscoe, the Port Elizabeth pair of Greg Harvey and Lionel Acton in the Queen Motor Spares Raceco faced the dilemma of having to decide whether to push hard for an overall win or make sure of a finish to sustain their championship challenge. With consistency rather than sheer pace, also a hallmark of the father and son Czepek team in the V Motors Raceco. The Czepeks also needed a finish to keep their championship charge going, but were starting to lose ground to the leading bunch of cars. There were serious problems for Craig Draper in the Castrol Raceco, who was busy with roadside repairs when Class B crew Owen Nordia and Rocco Berger went sailing past in their Sandmaster. At the front of the field, Bux Caroline and Don Vale in the lubrication equipment Madiba were still setting a tremendous pace. Chasing after them were Derek Pinoy and Hilton Lowry in the Raceco, who were having a good run. Also having a good run were Nardus Alberts and Peter Mathieu in the Rapsa Raceco, who'd hit good form in the latter part of the season. Stan Illman and Franz Stangl were also having a good run in the Shell Raceco, but were being chased by Harry Roscoe, who was still the first of the single-seaters in the Protea Playing Cards Raceco. A consistent run saw Greg Harvey and Lionel Acton in the Queen Motor Spares entry ahead of championship rivals Franz Czepek, Senior and Junior. Walk and Greg Weeble had settled into a good rhythm in the Super Pave Raceco, with Walk's only complaint at this stage the lack of V8 power that pushed him along before his temporary absence from racing. Storming through the field were brothers Herman and Karl-Heinz Sulwald in the Sulwald Transport Raceco, who started from the middle of the field and were on a charge. The Sulwalds are the reigning special vehicle champions, but have not had a happy season and were looking for their first win. The Chepex were battling with an engine misfire, with the V-Motors Raceco gradually slipping down the field. With the race decided on corrected time, the Chepex had little chance of an overall win, but needed to finish ahead of championship rivals Greg Harvey and Lionel Acton. At the front of the field, Bux Carolyn and Don Vale in the lubrication equipment Badiba had lost ground through mechanical gremlins and were being rapidly caught on the road by the flying Sulwalds. Carolyn and Vale were still setting a fast pace, but with the corrected time system of scoring, the Sulwalds had taken over the lead despite running second on the road. For Carolyn and Vale, there was to be drama up ahead, with their challenge coming to an end with a broken gearbox. Although leading the race on corrected time, there was also drama ahead for the Sulwalds. They were running into clutch problems and were then hit by a 15-minute penalty for a technical infringement that was to drop them down to third spot at the finish. It was bad luck for the brothers from Palavoa, but with their problems and the demise of the Carolyn Vale car, it meant that Derek Pinoy and Hilton Laurie were up into first place on corrected time. The drama ahead of them also saw Nardus Alberts and Peter Mathieu move up a place or two. After another good outing in the Rapsa Raceco, Alberts and Mathieu slotted into second place ahead of the Sulwalds. Behind the leading trio of twin-seater cars, a good scrap had developed for fourth and fifth between the single-seaters of Richard Carolyn in the lubrication equipment car and Harry Roscoe in the Protea playing cards Raceco. The elder of the Carolyn brothers was going along as steadily as ever, but fourth place and honours in the battle of the single-seaters eventually went to Roscoe. On corrected time, Roscoe was a little more than 4 minutes ahead of Carolyn. Sixth place overall went to Greg Harvey and Lionel Acton in the Queen Motorspace Raceco. From their point of view, the important thing was that they finished ahead of Franz Chepex Senior and Junior in the V-Motors Raceco, with the championship battle set to go all the way to the wire. Despite battling along with the V-Motors car not always firing on all cylinders, the Chepex nursed the racecar home to finish 6 minutes behind Harvey and Acton, with the Roof of Africa a showdown for the two crews. Behind the Chepex, another good run saw Wade Perrins and Derek Frankenberg into 8th place overall and first of the Class B entries. In a race of fluctuating fortunes, victory to Derek Pinoy and Hilton Laurie, ahead of Nardus Alberts and Peter Mathieu and the unfortunate Sulwald brothers, with the Special Vehicle Championship far from settled. Going into the Caledon 400, Alex Vowles led the 200 class motorcycle championship from Henny Human. In the 250 class, free-stated Graham McLaughlin on home territory in Vepner led Darrell Curtis and Janus Oosthuizen, with Rian van Niekerk out in front of Kevin Fisher and Errol Dalton on the Big Banger 500 category. Off-road racing's Kamikaze Motorcycle Brigade have produced some super races this season, with the Caledon 400 expected to keep the trend going. Local boy Graham McLaughlin on the Lesotho Office Equipment 250 Honda was into an early lead. Doing the chasing were Errol Dalton on the Lesotho Office Equipment Honda running in the 500 category and Darrell Curtis on the Pro Action AGA Panasonic KTM, who was looking to add the Caledon 400 to his Sugar Belt and Settler 400 victories earlier in the season. The Caledon also saw the return to action of Sugarpelt 400 winner Yuri Human, who was seriously injured earlier in the season. In the end, Human only completed half the course after complaining of severe fatigue, but it was good to see one of South Africa's top off-road riders back in action. Also back in action this season is Brian Bontekoning on the Schimmels Antelex Dairy Yamaha, who was being chased in the early stages by 500 championship leader Rian van Niekerk on the PD Motorcycles Honda. The Caledon route is a tough one for the motorcyclists, but was said to produce some close racing in the battle for overall and class honours. With the season coming to an end, every point was crucial for championship contenders. Free Stater Graham McLaughlin has yet to take an overall win in a national off-road event, but on home territory was in with a chance of breaking the ice. McLaughlin's lead was a tenuous one, and there was danger looming behind him in the form of Lesotho Office Equipment teammate Errol Dalton on the big 500 Honda. Dalton is a highly experienced Springbok and could see McLaughlin up ahead. Although he had McLaughlin in sight, Dalton also had to watch his back, with Darrell Curtis closing in with all three riders in sight of each other in what was building into a terrific race. Out in front in the 200 class in the early stages was Henny Human on the Lesotho Office Equipment Honda. Behind him, Yuri Human was feeling his way along after his long layoff and looked pleased enough to simply be back on a bike. Up ahead of the pair, a terrific duel was developing for second and third in the 500 class. Kevin Fisher on the 510 Honda and championship leader Rian Fenikak on the PD Motorcycles Honda were locked in another of the battles that were developing throughout the field. Rian Fenikak has ridden consistently all season and was making a bold attempt to catch Fisher. With the final bike results also decided on corrected time, seconds lost or gained are crucial. At the front of the field, there'd been a change in running order. Errol Dalton was now ahead of Graham McLaughlin and had a few anxious looks over his shoulder to check on McLaughlin's progress. McLaughlin was pushing along as hard as he could, but behind him, Darrell Curtis was really flying on the Pro Action AGA Panasonic KTM. With race distance running out on him, Curtis was making an all-out bid to get past the Free Stater, both on the road and on corrected time. Aware that Rian Fenikak posed a threat, Kevin Fisher could not afford to make any late mistakes. But sandwiched between Fisher and Fenikak was Clayton Enslin on the Kawasaki. Enslin had made a terrific charge to force his way into the top 5 and go into the lead in the 200 class. Now Rian Fenikak faced a double challenge. He needed to try and catch both Enslin and Fisher, but race distance was running out on him, although third in class would do his championship hopes no harm. A second in the 200 class would also maintain Henny Human's championship hopes in the class, and he's another rider who's performed consistently all season. Good rides also saw Wayne Farmer and Dino Paolini force their way into the top 10, along with Brian Bontekoning. But with Alfie Cox competing overseas this season, the off-road bike category's been thrown wide open. In Cox's absence, Errol Dalton and Darrell Curtis have emerged as the dominant forces. Overall victory in the Caledon 400 also saw Errol Dalton take the 500 class, with second place Darrell Curtis taking the 250 category. Clayton Enslin's fourth place gave him the 200 class victory.
Errol, third win of the season.
Yeah, I had a very good race today. I think I rode quite a good, perfect race. I took it easy the first half, fell off on the first loop. I think that woke me up a bit and got going again. And after that, I just went to the front and stayed there. No mistakes.
Toyota, AGA Panasonic, lubrication equipment, Sani, and Lucas proudly brought you highlights of the Caledon 400.